everyone, Pam Gregory, astrologer. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the second half of October and the new moon that we have coming up in Scorpio on the 27th or 28th of the month, depending on where in the world you live. Now, I've mentioned in the last couple of videos that events are starting to really speed up in these last few weeks of the year. Jupiter is moving direct and really accelerating now. Saturn moving direct, Pluto moving direct as of the 3rd of October. So we have this greater feeling of momentum, particularly around important legal issues in the world, Jupiter and Sagittarius, also around constitutional issues in the world, Saturn in Capricorn. So we're seeing many events starting to really gather pace, and that will increase very much through November and December too. Now, this second half particularly is very intense in its energy. Pluto is strong all the way through the month. It was stationary direct on the 3rd of the month, but it also rules Scorpio, and we see the personal planets moving into the sign of Scorpio. In this second half of the month, Mercury and Venus are already in Scorpio. On the 24th of the month, the Sun moves into Scorpio, and then for our new moon, on the 27th and 28th, the moon moves into Scorpio. So we have quite a bunching up of scorpionic energy. Now, this is always very intense, deep feeling. It's terrific for focus. It's also, even though it isn't a full moon, which is a very good time to release feeling, anytime you get this concentration around Scorpio, it is a really good time to look at any feelings or emotions that you've stuffed down over the years, that you've repressed. This is a very good time just to let them come into the light and release them, because this can represent a new emotional beginning for you at this new moon. For the second half of the month, we have Jupiter conjunct Ceres, the goddess of natural resources, agriculture. It's very linked to the earth. Jupiter's at 22, Sagittarius, Ceres at 23. And that could act as another piece of the puzzle in the setup for January 2020, which is so important for us. Because at the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in January 2020, Ceres is also conjunct that conjunction. We have a huge concentration of planets in Capricorn by that time. So we'll see what happens in this second half of October related to those issues, natural resources, the earth, etc., that may act as another stepping stone for January. The last week of the month in particular, this second half of October is very yang, dynamic, cardinal energy, much stronger than the first half, but particularly that last week of October. On the 21st of the month, we have Mars coming into a square with the nodal axis. Now, Mars in myth is god of war. It's very much about assertion and aggression and taking the initiative. But the North Node in Cancer, which is our collective evolutionary point, is about great sensitivity. It's about great compassion and protection for the vulnerable. So we may be feeling those emotions strongly, particularly if people are under any kind of attack, Mars squaring that nodal axis. But we have to connect to those feelings, our deep human feelings of compassion and a need to protect the vulnerable. That's where we're headed very positively with this North Node in Cancer. Then on the 26th of the month, the moon comes to conjunct Mars, so it highlights that Martian impulse. And both are exactly square to Saturn at that time, 15 of Libra, Saturn at 15 of Capricorn. And Mars then gradually through that last week comes to square Pluto and then starts to oppose Eris, goddess of discord. So it's a kind of forming T-square, if you like, between those planets. Now, whenever you get a combination of particularly Mars, Saturn and Pluto, particularly in cardinal signs as well, this is super strong energy, particularly in this last week. It can be quite militaristic, it can be quite warlike, so I would really encourage you personally to pull back from any assertive or aggressive impulses. Take a breath. Be mindful. Think before you speak, because it's an impulse, Mars. It wants us to always act quickly on impulse. So pull back from those instincts yourself, because actually if we can use this energy positively, personally, it is excellent for setting clear goals, working very hard, Saturn, often working for the long term, Saturn, towards something which could even be transformative for the world, Pluto. Pluto works best where we're using it altruistically. If we're not just using it for ourselves to make a living, if we're using it for others to make a difference, that's when Pluto really, really works well. So this combination can be excellent for that kind of goal setting, focus, Scorpio, determination, tenacity, hanging on in with great discipline and hard work to produce a result which can be transformative. So it's very, very positive in that way, but it does have, in the greater world, more assertive potential. But remember that each of us in every moment is creating the future. We so often feel that the future is set and we're just stepping into it. That's not the case. Every single one of us is creating the future in every single thought, emotion that we have. So if we can start to work together collectively on the same high vibration, we can actually change how the future is going to unfold for us and the world. So that is one of the most powerful things we can do for the world right now, to work energetically. The new moon happens at 4 degrees 25 minutes of Scorpio. It happens on the 27th of the month at 8:38 p.m. Pacific, and it happens on the 28th at 3:38 a.m. UK time. See where 4 degrees of Scorpio falls in your chart, because this is always an excellent time to set a new intention. And when you set that new intention, ideally it needs to be conditioned by the house area, by the place in your chart where 4 degrees of Scorpio is falling. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can download a free birth chart from my website, pamgregory.com. And then if you go to this link above, that will take you to my store. You can buy a 2-part video series that will explain what all these aspects mean when they fall in various areas of your chart and how to find those. Because your intention is principally conditioned by the house area rather than by the sign. For instance, if this is falling in your 4th house, or is there some kind of new beginning in your home of refurbishment, or are you moving to a new home? Is it in your 10th house? There's a new opportunity in your career, even a new job for you. Is that what you want to set your intention on? And very often it will manifest, if not before, certainly at the 6-month point when we get a full moon in that same sign in Scorpio. So this is a great way to work strategically and powerfully with astrology. So very intense energy with the Sun, Moon, Mercury and Venus all in Scorpio at this point. So as I say, great intensity, great focus, great tenacity, and a potential to let go what no longer serves you. Another aspect that we have at the new moon is Mars is in a quincunx, an awkward quincunx to Neptune. This can suggest aggression at sea, some kind of naval warfare. It can also suggest that any aggression perhaps can become chaotic or confused, not clearly thought out, because Neptune in its less positive expression can be muddledom, can be chaos, can be confusion. So that's another very good reason to pull back from any aggression. This is very good, however, for inspiring your imagination, for instance. It's very positive for that. And then we have what is a very powerful aspect of this new moon, which is Uranus at 4 degrees of Taurus, exactly opposing the Sun and Moon at 4 degrees of Scorpio. Now, see where 4 degrees of Taurus falls in your chart. Remember that Uranus moves very, very slowly. It spends 7 years in a sign, so it's not going to move out of Taurus until 2026. But whichever house it's falling in your chart, it wants to shake up any staleness, any deadening routine, anything which has become really predictable. It wants to shake us up to a new state of being. So is it falling in your 6th house? Is it changing your work routine? Or is it changing even the way you look at your health and bringing in new ideas for that? Because Uranus directly opposing the Sun and Moon is wonderful for connecting us to our superconscious. I always think of Uranus as a 4th dimensional planet. It is very linked to the superconscious, and we can get very fast downloads of information at this time. Uranus speeds everything up. We can get downloads of information, sudden insights, seeing things from a different point of view. Uranus is very future oriented. It always wants to bring in the new. It's the antithesis of Saturn, which is we've always done it this way. We want to keep the status quo. It's very traditional. Uranus is the maverick that just wants to break all of that up and do things in a new and very different way. Remember, it's the planet of awakening. So this can be a time in that last week of the month when the energy is so strong that we can really shift our consciousness at this new moon. So a very good time to meditate around this new moon. Uranus is also about pure truth. It's the sword of pure truth. And because it's opposed to the Sun and Moon in Scorpio, and we have 4 planets in Scorpio, that is the sign connected to secrets. So we could at this time see more very important secrets being revealed to the world that actually have considerable impact for the world, because the sword of truth goes in there and achieves clarity. So it can be a really powerful time for secrets to be revealed as well. Uranus, of course, is also the planet of shocks, sudden surprises, sudden opportunities. It's the planet of revolution, very much connected to breaking down in order to break through to something better. So it's a very powerful revolutionary urge. And like Eris, it's often an urge for people to come up from the street to protest because they see a better vision. They demand that their voice is heard in a bigger way, and very much demanding more equality as well. So sudden opportunities, surprises, the unexpected, expect the unexpected always when we have strong aspects to Uranus, and very much the planet of revolution as well as being the planet of awakening. I think the other important thing to note right at the end of this month, October, is on the 31st, the day that the UK is due to leave the EU and Brexit will happen, Mercury goes stationary retrograde at 27 of Scorpio. And it stays retrograde in that sign of Scorpio all the way through to the 9th of December, when it then moves direct again. Now, I've often said that Mercury retrograde, many of us are born with Mercury retrograde, is a very good thing, I feel. I'm born with Mercury retrograde, and I've worked with and in communication all of my adult life. So when it's retrograde at birth, it makes you think more deeply, you're more contemplative, you go back over things mentally a little more, and I think it's been a real bonus, a real asset. However, because Mercury is linked to contracts and decisions, when there is such an enormous decision as Brexit, to have on the very day that we're leaving, supposedly, to have Mercury going stationary retrograde is probably less than perfect, because it always suggests an unravelling of some kind, an unravelling in that the detail wasn't correct, or there's a movement in the UK to rejoin the EU, perhaps. I can see that potential happening. You probably didn't need an astrologer to tell you this, but there is some kind of backtracking or unravelling when you have Mercury retrograde, when it's such an incredibly important decision for the UK. So, of course, it may not happen on the 31st. We may be looking beyond that. There's an awful lot of complexity around that. But just to let you know that if it does happen that day, there could be some backtracking or unravelling of some kind. But with all of this very strong dynamic energy, really would advise you excuse me, to stay out of the drama. If you want to observe what's happening in the world, that's fine too, but try and do it in a detached way. Do it as the witness. Do it as the observer. Stay out of the drama, stay out of feeling churned up and being affected by the chaos and experiencing negative emotions. Try and detach. And I think something that's particularly useful as an exercise, which I truly do every single day of my life, when I wake up every morning, before I open my eyes, when I'm still in that kind of slightly dreamy state, I will say silently to myself, I live in peace and bliss and joy. I live in peace and bliss and joy. And I will just say that silently quite a few times to myself, but I will feel into those emotions of peace and bliss and joy. And then I'll open my eyes and get on with my day. But that tends to set the tone for the day. And generally through my days, although I'm super busy, I generally am very peaceful and joyful through my days. And that is so much better than as soon as you wake up, clicking into your to-do list or your overwhelming problems. It sets the tone in a different way. And this is a really, really simple way that we can start to work energetically. And if we create our bubble of peace and bliss and joy, that can ripple out to the world and really change the people we meet through our day and even contribute our unique spark to the collective consciousness too. So it's a really, really useful exercise to do, particularly if you're kind of starting to get caught up in the drama of all that is going on in the world, because there's a lot. This period running until the end of the year is an outstanding period to create a new you and a new foundation for your life. And as I often say, the more you can just let the past go, the past that has seemed so fixed and permanent and stuck, if you could just let that go and use this as an opportunity to create something really new for yourself and start to acknowledge, because this is what the future is about really, start to acknowledge the power that each of us has as co-creators in our life. Start to use these simple exercises that I've just mentioned. Use intention through your day. Use focus. Scorpio is brilliant for that, to pull out of the quantum soup the kind of reality you want to experience. So if you'd like more information about my books, my monthly newsletter, when I can go into much more detail about global events that people are very interested in, I haven't got time to do that in the videos, or my teaching videos, I've got quite a few teaching videos now. You can just go to my website, pamgregory.com, go onto the products page for my teaching videos. I mentioned in the last update video, I've just finished filming some teaching videos called Astrological Synthesis, and this is 2.25 hours of very concentrated teaching, not for beginners. They deal with natal chart analysis. And I also have to say they're not exhaustive. They won't tell you everything you need to know about natal chart analysis, but what they will give you is, I think, information that is probably new to you. Quite a lot of it's going to be new to you in terms of techniques you can use, insights you can get into natal charts, and things that I've observed over my many years working with astrology that you wouldn't necessarily find elsewhere online. I think that will be very useful. Certainly, that is what people are playing back to me. You know, this is really new information, and thank you. So I've put the link for those teaching videos called Astrological Synthesis in the description below here, but you can also get that direct from my product page on my website, pamgregory.com. So I hope that's been useful for you. As I say, stay in your bliss bubble, create that for yourself every day, and you really will change your world. Thank you so much for listening, and have a wonderful, powerful, focused new moon in Scorpio, 27th, 28th of October. Bye for now.